S.D. Plissken, American, Lieutenant, Special Forces Unit Black Light. Youngest man to be decorated by the President. I have a deal for you. You go in, find the President, bring him out in 24 hours, and you're a free man.
24 hours, huh? Call me Snake.
Probably the most iconic film from John Carpenter, Escape from New York, is without a doubt the movie that gave Kurt Russell one of his greatest roles, that of Snake Plissken. With its wild characters and dystopian take on America, today we're diving into the story of Escape from New York, from its creation to its theatrical release, and how it even went on to inspire Hideo Kojima's work. Despite its B-movie appearance, you'll see how this cult classic manages to deliver a lot with very little, thanks to the clever minds behind it. Without further ado, let's get started.
And remember, once you're inside, you're on your own.
Oh, you mean I can't count on you?
No.
Good.
The story of Escape from New York dates back to 1974 during the Watergate scandal, which gave John Carpenter the idea for a screenplay involving the President of the United States. For the record, the Watergate scandal was a political espionage and corruption affair that took place in the United States between 1972 and 1974 during the presidential elections. The public revelation of this scandal led to the resignation of President Richard Nixon. Drawing inspiration from the movie Death Wish, which depicts New York as a city ruled by crime, as well as the novel Planet of the Damned, in which an anti-hero is sent to another planet to prevent a nuclear war, John Carpenter finalized the script for Escape from New York in 1976. To name his main character, he needed a powerful name, and according to him, it was while asking a friend that he heard about a young man living in Cleveland named Snake Plissken. That was all it took to convince Carpenter, who named his protagonist after him.
The name's Plissken.
Incidentally, the characters Cronenberg and Romero were named as a tribute to directors David Cronenberg, best known for The Fly, and George Romero, the father of zombie films. Once the script was finished, Carpenter pitched it to several studios, but none wanted to be involved, deeming the story too violent, too scary, and too weird. Eventually, the director signed a multi-picture deal with Avco Embassy Pictures, which agreed to finance half of the project.
Now, at the time, I had to convince the studio. Give Kurt Russell a chance to play a tough guy.
Once the contract was signed and the film got the go-ahead, the next step was to cast the actors. The American studio wanted Snake to be played by big names such as Tommy Lee Jones, Charles Bronson, or Chuck Norris, but Carpenter was convinced that Kurt Russell was the right man for the role and pushed hard to get him. It was pretty much the same story for the role of Houck, for which Carpenter chose Lee Van Cleef, as he was a fan of his westerns. As for Russell, accepting the job was only the beginning, as he had to fully embody his character. To do that, he followed a diet and a mass-gaining workout routine to build muscle. He also drew inspiration from some of his era's biggest action stars like Bruce Lee, Robert Ginty, and of course Clint Eastwood, known for his laid-back swagger characters.
Yeah, well, if you're the sheriff, you better get these men on the ground.
Oh, and as a matter of fact, Kurt Russell actually helped design parts of Snake Plissken's character himself. He came up with the idea for the eye patch, the golf spikes on the boots, and even the location of the snake tattoo. And as for where the snake's tail ends, well, Russell prefers to leave that to your imagination.
Okay. It was like, that was back in the day, though. They weren't quite, it was on top of it.
What forms the snake's tail at the bottom?
Well, that was the idea. That was the idea of the snake, what's going on, yeah.
Does it have a long tail, the snake?
Like I said, back in the day.
We had to look around for some city that looked like destroyed. It takes place in New York City, but New York was out of the question. We couldn't shoot there. We didn't have the money. So we found the perfect location, and that was St. Louis, Missouri.
The final script now approved and the cast hired, the crew had to find a shooting location. With a limited budget of $6 million, filming in a post-apocalyptic version of New York was too expensive, so the studio set out to find the worst city in America and ended up choosing St. Louis. Devastated by a major fire in 1976 that had left parts of the city in ruins, it turned out to be the perfect setting for the movie. From August to November 1980, Escape from New York was shot in St. Louis, as well as in Los Angeles, and, to a lesser extent, in New York and Atlanta. Since the story takes place at night, Carpenter had to convince the city officials to cut off electricity in several neighborhoods after dark. As a result, the crew barely saw daylight for 3 months. Filming began with a 10-minute sequence that was ultimately cut from the final version. This opening scene introduced Snake Plissken and his partner Bill Taylor fleeing through the New York subway after robbing the U.S. Federal Reserve. Bill is seriously injured, and Snake ultimately refuses to abandon his friend and surrenders to the police. That's how he ends up in prison at the beginning of the movie. Carpenter decided to cut this scene because he didn't want Snake to be seen as a hero willing to sacrifice himself for others.
Taylor! Taylor!
Snake's arrest fueled the rumor that he was dead and led to the famous line,
"I heard you were dead,"
repeated by several characters throughout the film. That line is also a nod to the 1971 western Big Jake, where everyone believed that the main character Jacob was dead.
Oh, I thought you were dead, Mr. McCandles.
Not hardly.
For Kurt Russell, the most difficult scene to shoot was the gladiator-style fight in the ring. Indeed, while Russell was skilled at throwing fake punches, his opponent, a professional wrestler known as Ox Baker, had no acting experience and didn't hold back. When Russell had enough, he gently landed a shot to Ox's groin during a break, asking him to calm down.
So finally, Kurt had enough. So he walked over and he said, "Listen, Ox, listen, man, you gotta cool down." And gently, Kurt tapped Ox in the groin. Pop. So Ox calmed down.
I'm ready.
One of the film's most distinctive qualities lies in its special effects. Managing to show so much with very little was made possible thanks to a young James Cameron, now famous for movies such as Terminator, Titanic, and Avatar. For instance, to capture the scenes of the president's plane in flight, a resin model of the aircraft was built. Another example is the 3D display inside Snake's glider, created simply by filming a miniature model of New York under black light with reflective tape applied to the buildings and landscape to achieve that glowing wireframe effect. Interestingly, once filming wrapped, this miniature version of New York was repainted and later reused in Blade Runner, which would be released a year after Escape from New York. As for the film's score, if you're familiar with John Carpenter, you probably know that in addition to writing and directing, he usually composes the music for his films as well. Escape from New York was no exception, and its soundtrack has since become one of Carpenter's most iconic movie scores. Less than a year after filming wrapped, Escape from New York premiered in cinemas, first in Japan on May 23, 1981, then in France on June 24th, and finally in the United States on July 10th, before reaching audiences around the world. In the US alone, the film earned $25 million in its year of release and drew over 1 million viewers in France. It went on to receive 4 nominations at the 1982 Saturn Awards, which honor the best science fiction movies. The film was generally well received and quickly became a cult classic of the 1980s. Beyond the books, comics, and board games based on the movie, its impact was such that several projects for a remake, an animated series, and even a video game were considered but ultimately cancelled.
rules are simple. Once you go in, you don't come out.
The year is 1997, World War III is raging, and crime in the United States has risen by 400%. In response, the US government turns Manhattan into a high-security open-air prison, sealing off the island from the outside world. As the US president travels to a peace summit carrying classified documents and a cassette tape detailing nuclear fusion power generation, his plane is hijacked by a terrorist and crashes into Manhattan. The president is then captured by the men of the Duke of New York, a powerful local crime lord.
20 seconds.
Let's go. Let's go.
Meanwhile, Snake Plissken, a former Special Forces soldier, is about to be imprisoned in Manhattan for robbing the Federal Reserve when Commissioner Bob Houck offers him a deal. If Snake rescues the president in time for the summit, he will be cleared of all charges and set free. To ensure that Snake completes his mission, Houck secretly injects him with microscopic capsules that will explode his carotid arteries within 22 hours, preventing him from escaping.
In 10 or 15 seconds. Come on now.
Snake now has 22 hours to find and return the president and his cassette tape to Houck for the officer to neutralize his explosives and grant him freedom.
When I get back, I'm gonna kill you.
Sent to Manhattan aboard a glider, Plissken ventures into the ruins of New York, where he meets a cab driver named Cabby, who tells him that the president is being held prisoner by the Duke. Snake then makes contact with an old acquaintance called Harold Hellman, who is now the Duke's advisor, and forces his old friend to lead him to the Duke's hideout.
You want to see him sprayed all over that map, baby? Where's the president?
I swear to God, Snake, I don't know.
Fuck with me.
After failing to rescue the president, Snake is captured by the Duke's henchmen. Left with no choice but to fight the island's champion to survive, Snake draws all attention to himself, giving Harold and his wife Maggie the chance to kill Romero, the Duke's right-hand man, and escape with the president. In the confusion, Snake manages to join the fugitives and tells Houck that he is on his way back with the president. With the Duke in pursuit, Snake, his companions, and the president manage to escape thanks to Cabby, who happens to have the president's cassette tape, which he had earlier traded with Romero. Reaching the edge of the prison zone, Snake's crew heads for the Queensboro Bridge, rigged with mines to prevent any escape. As the deadline approaches and the Duke is hot on their heels, the group speeds across the bridge, but their vehicle hits a mine and explodes, killing Cabby on the spot. Harold is also blown up by a mine. And Maggie, who refuses to leave him, dies trying to take on the Duke. Despite everything, Snake and the president manage to reach the outer wall of the prison. Just as the Duke catches up, the president grabs a machine gun and shoots him. With only a few minutes to live, Snake finally reaches the other side of the wall and rushes towards Houck, who neutralizes the explosive capsules in his throat. Later on, as the president prepares to deliver a live speech to the world leaders at the Peace Summit, he thanks Snake for saving him but shows no concern for those who died in the process. Disgusted, Snake walks away. The president's speech begins, and when he plays the tape that was supposed to reveal secrets about nuclear fusion, here is what the world gets to hear. It was actually a jazz tape belonging to Cabby. Meanwhile, Snake, who leaves as a free man, pulls the real tape from his pocket and destroys it. It is no secret that Escape from New York is one of the works that had the biggest influence on Hideo Kojima when creating the Metal Gear saga. The game most inspired by it is Metal Gear Solid. That's why the Studio Canal, which owns the rights to the film, wanted to sue Kojima and Konami for plagiarism at the time, but Carpenter was against it because he knew Kojima and thought he was a nice guy. Solid Snake, the game's protagonist, is almost an exact copy of Snake Plissken. Both characters share the same codename, are former Special Forces soldiers, and love to smoke a cigarette from time to time. They also behave in a similar way, being cold, cynical, and detached.
Can you shoot me, rookie?
But above all, they live only for themselves and don't care about others, although Solid Snake's attitude will evolve throughout the game. As for the story, Metal Gear Solid follows the basic plot of Escape from New York. Snake has to sneak his way through an island controlled by terrorists and rescue two important people holding the activation codes for a nuclear tank. Just like Plissken, Snake is injected with something deadly and is forced to complete his mission. And once on site, they both team up with allies, get captured by the enemy, and end up escaping in a car. Metal Gear Solid 2 draws less directly from Escape from New York, but it's worth mentioning that, like Plissken, Raiden must also rescue the President of the United States, whose vital signs are needed to activate Arsenal gear. The most obvious nod to Carpenter's film is the nickname Iroquois Plissken, used by Solid Snake for much of the game.
My name is Plissken. Iroquois Plissken. Lieutenant Junior Grade.
With Metal Gear Solid 3 and the introduction of Naked Snake, the influence of Escape from New York mainly shows in the main character. Kojima initially offered the role of Big Boss to Kurt Russell himself, but after the actor turned it down, David Hayter was given the role. From then on, aside from Big Boss's eye patch and fake snake-shaped scar, the influence of Escape from New York would fade from the later entries in Kojima's saga, which, like John Carpenter's film, would go on to become a cult classic and inspire many other creators.